This week on The Futurists, Dr. Martha Boeckenfeld.
Money is gone as we know it. There is no money.
Hey there, welcome back to The Futurists. I'm Rob Tercek, and I'm thrilled to have my co-host Brett King here with me this week. Hi, Brett. How you been?
Hey, good. Yeah, in writing mode today. So trying to get this other book out. So
yet another book. Good. I just did a big piece myself on copyright in the age of artificial intelligence, which turns out to be a really interesting topic. I know copyright people are like ready to fall asleep when they hear it, but it actually turns out to be quite good. Do you think that we have to completely revisit the concept of intellectual property in the AI world? Well, I think, the principles of intellectual property have been around for 300 years. I don't think that's going to change. It's just that that's not necessarily the right tool to govern AI with. And so people are trying to force fit AI into copyright. It doesn't fit neatly. And there are a dozen cases coming now against AI companies. They're all going to fail. That's my prediction, that they are not going to be successful copyright infringement lawsuits. Yeah. But watch this space. Coming soon, we'll have a couple of experts from the field come in and they can correct me where I'm wrong.
Yeah. I mean, at what point does it, in generative AI, at what point does it diverge enough from the seeded data that it's no longer representative of the seeded data,
the AI companies would say immediately, right? Because when you're training something on billions of parameters, really hundreds of millions of texts, it's very hard to say like this particular text. Now, the lawsuits are going to try to make that case. And to prove it, they're going to have to show first that the data, that the system was trained on that particular book or, that particular work. And then they'll have to show points of similarity. And then they'll have to show that there was commercial damage, that somehow that reduced the commercial prospects for the original book. That's going to be an extraordinarily difficult thing to do. So let's hold that for a future show. Personally,
we should definitely get into it. I do think that, there are sort of clear cases of IP and a recording artist that's having AI or AI produced tracks, movie stars,
there are opportunities, and actually there are fantastic opportunities. And right now, everybody's obsessed right now with protecting what they've got and hanging on to the stuff from the past.
No, I think as an actor, being able to just rent out Bruce Willis would have been very happy to do that. I think in recent times, just renting out his digital identity to produce, although there's some controversy surrounding that. But why don't we get into our guest for today?
So let's introduce our guest. So today we have a guest coming to us from Spain by way of Switzerland, Dr. Martha Boeckenfeld. Dr. Martha Boeckenfeld, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Or maybe it's us that's welcome to the Marthaverse, which is what you like to talk about your view. But
let's get into the Marthaverse. Tell us about that.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Super excited being here, and welcome to the Metaverse, as you say. And I would say that Kingverse would also be another name, which would be quite revealing.
Kingdom, it's the kingdom, right?
It's the kingdom. Yeah, exactly. We have already with Fortnite, we have a lot of kingdoms. So maybe we don't need that anymore.
Well, great. So for those that aren't familiar with you, you are the Dean of the Metaverse Academy. You're an ambassador for the All Stars Woman DAO. That's you're also previously digital platform advisor at UBS and currently on the board of directors of Generali in Switzerland. You spend your time between Switzerland and Spain. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. That's
great.
Well, between the snow and the sun.
Yes.
Sounds pretty hard to beat. That sounds very nice. What keeps you most focused? What's the busiest thing that you're working on right now?
The busiest thing is working with brands, and the focus is really on education. So it could be startups, or it could also be what we call incumbents, so banks. It's very interesting when they come and have all these ideas about what they want to do, and they don't really know where to go, but they have clear ideas. They want to be in Decentraland, or for those who don't know, it's a blockchain-based metaverse, where some of the big guys are, even though maybe not many people go there, or Sandbox or the like. But I think it's very important that you start with the experiences. So I am focused on providing experiences in Metaverse. So now I have my own Metaverse created exactly for that purpose, so that I can train people, understand what are the use cases, what this is for, how should they focus also really to create something which is outstanding for their brand, how they can be also very loyal to what they do today, like Lego, being very loyal in everything they do to creating something where they educate children and also educate parents, and having this interconnection between parents and children. And I think that is loyalty to your brand. This is true value. And what we have in terms of emerging tech is not much different.
Okay, so I want to get into this. We've had a number of guests on the show who talked about the metaverse, including Mark Pesce and Tony Parisi, who actually invented it back in the 1990s. Each of them came on the show and spoke about what they're doing and some of the new projects that they've been working on. It's been a lively topic for us here, and it keeps coming back. But lately, the metaverse has been kind of on the down slope. You know, the past year has been very tough on the metaverse. First, Facebook got clobbered. You know, their investors bailed out. The share price dropped by 60, 70%. Tremendous setback for them. That hasn't deterred Mark Zuckerberg. He continues to invest. Apparently, he invested about $40 billion total in building out Facebook's version of the metaverse. But in general, the view has been that this is not something that's taken off yet, or it's quite clicked yet with the public. Can you talk a little bit about the state of the metaverse today?
Yeah, I think it's a big misconception because Facebook rebranded to Meta, that everyone immediately says, okay, the metaverse is Meta. So that is, in my view, completely wrong because you have a lot of use cases, and one of the biggest one, and we know that's the most highly valued company right now, is NVIDIA. They are working with the so-called Omniverse, where they create and help companies with industrial metaverses. So Siemens, BMW, all the big companies have a digital twin of their entire processes, of their creative teams and so on. So they have digital avatars, digital twin, AI, you name it. And that is much bigger than, when you say Meta has invested 14 billion. I mean, this is peanuts. We had in 2022, we had VCs investing in Web3 and Metaverse, and basically I wouldn't say all one thing, but different layers of what is coming. So people said the Metaverse is dead because Meta basically is not successful. But
well, hang on. It's not just Meta's failure, and it is clear.
It's AI, and spatial computing. But if you think about
okay, but you're throwing a whole bunch of terms. Let's break them apart here, because I'm asking about the Metaverse. We can certainly get into AI.
This is the thing.
No. But I think the misconception is, one, Metaverse is not Meta, and two, Metaverse is not something separate. It's not a space where you go to. Even though I have my Metaverse, you go to the Metaverse, and there's a very, very excellent layer chart from John Radoff years ago, where he said it's the 7 layers of the Metaverse. You have the infrastructure, you have AI, you have spatial computing, you have augmented reality. It's all part of it.
Yeah, so but no one is using that stuff. I mean, just let's be clear. No one's using it. When you go to Decentraland, or if you go to Sandbox, you mentioned those 2 decentralized versions of the Metaverse. They are complete failures. There is no one there. The server, it might say there's 700 people on the server, but you will see no one.
Yeah, but again, I think I see where Martha's going with this. This is a slice of the metaverse. It's a metaverse environment, but metaverse as a competency or as an arena involves the whole digital twin concept. It involves, the concept of digital assets, so this is a bit contentious, but, when Tony Parisi and Mark Pesce come on the show and they talk about Web3, they're talking about the 3D web, right? But when we talk about Web 3D in the metaverse perspective, we're now talking about the 3rd generation of web. And that includes sort of this basic infrastructure around digital assets and
that's the decentralized web, sure. But that also, let's be clear, no one's using that either.
But hang on, dude. Look at what Shanghai just announced, basically $1 trillion digital asset infrastructure play today.
Okay, plenty of people are investing, and it is like a black hole that absorbs an enormous amount of cash. The point is that no consumers are using any of this stuff today.
Right, but is there a future in this space? The big part of the metaverse, and Martha, jump in here. I think the big part of the metaverse is smart contracts, and it's the digital representation.
You're just. Oh, okay. So
I think if I may say, so there is I would say no one knows what the metaverse really is. So you ask different experts, they have different definitions, but it's very clear it's the next generation. And if we talk about the vision, it's something different from what also, Brett, you described, the little pieces of the puzzle, like you have a world which consists of different countries, but each different country doesn't mean it's a world. So it's the same with the metaverse. You have Decentraland, you have Sandbox, you have Meta, and
no one's using any of them. The point I'm making is very simple. It's all these things are being built and enormous amounts of cash are being burned, but there's no evidence of traction with consumers. Industrial metaverse is a separate topic, so don't pivot to that. Let's talk about this one, and then we'll turn to please, Martha, hang on. Let me just finish the sentence because I really want to make the point clear because it's a little confusing from this conversation. I'm asking one specific question, which is about consumer adoption. And now you guys are talking about Web3, you're talking about decentralization, you're talking about smart contract. That's all separate. I'm asking one simple question. Who's using the metaverse today? Who?
So there is, which I agree with you, as always, as we have an innovation, and you are very well aware of hype cycles. So we are not even at the hype with metaverse. So we have an innovation trigger. We are before, in my view, before the hype cycle. So it's the same as the typical example with the smartphone. How many people have used the smartphone at the beginning? So it's a normal, I would say, innovation cycle, and it's a normal for exponential growth. It starts very slowly. So if you ask, who are the Web3 people? Who are the people, for example, who come to my Metaverse? So you know that spatial, usually when you have 50 people, wow, that's amazing. So I have since March, I have now 8,000 views, which is a great success. And I don't even have everyday events. So who's coming there? There are different people. There are the Web3, you can say native, but hang on, it's not the native who are 10, 15, 20 years old. It's those who are 35 plus years old who are totally excited about Web3. And then you have those people I fortunately can take along because of my education and because of all the efforts I do. I take them with me. So they easily get into this. And you said at the beginning, you have been there, so you know it's by desktop. So there are a lot of, and it's Web2 based, basically, also correctly pointing out. But in my view, we are on a journey. So saying today, no one is using it. Yes, it's correct because we are very, very early and we have an adoption curve, which we see slowly. And sometimes it's frustrating because you think, oh my God, am I alone? But luckily in the different networks, there are so many wonderful people. And I haven't seen, I have to say, the same community building, the same dedication, passion in any other community before. I've been, as you said, in platform ecosystem digitization. This is different.
But Second Life has been around for 20 years and there's 1 million users. In other words, Second Life has 1,000 times more users than any current metaverse. It's a significant difference, right? So there is an issue with
I would say Roblox
I
would say Roblox is a prototype metaverse.
Okay, sure. I mean, you can just run with this thing and say anything's a metaverse, but that sort of dilutes the concept in my perspective. I'm trying to get a clear understanding. There are plenty of projects where the founders of the project declared this is a metaverse, and it's a destination, as Martha pointed out. It's a sort of a 3D immersive site. You could wear VR goggles, but no one does. And people who own VR, they use it twice a month on average. So this has been, I would say, immersive versions of digital worlds have not been very successful. Yes, game worlds have been extraordinarily successful, and it's clear that the game companies have the best opportunity. What's puzzling to me is why aren't more metaverses a game? It clearly works. People understand the game.
That's why also to your point, I think you have maybe not the right statistics for Sandbox. It's not that Sandbox is not successful. They are one of the blockchain-based basically applications which are more successful because they have games. And as we know, we have 3 billion gamers. And those 3 billion gamers are not all 15 to 20 years old. They're also older because the gaming aspect is also, that's why Spatial has started to introduce the gaming. And in Spatial, they are 40 plus year old. You know, they're the old guys like us here on the call. You can say the normal guys because it's intuitive.
I resemble that comment.
Just last night, I was looking at some reviews of Spatial to get ready for this interview, and they said Spatial is a lonely experience, and that was my experience of it as well. There's nobody there.
If
Look,
you
we don't have to
no,
beat the horse to death.
it's no,
The
no,
other
no,
example you offered
let's
a moment ago
let's move on.
was the industrial
Let's move on.
metaverse. And
no,
with
but I
industrial,
think it's
hang on. So
yeah,
sorry, hang on, Martha. I'm sorry. Industrial metaverse is a separate topic, and it's quite an interesting one. And there's a growing number of people who believe that we're going to build a metaverse by building a network of digital twins. These are 3D representations of real world facilities, say typically a factory, sort of an advanced manufacturing factory, but increasingly they're getting larger scale. So now we're starting to see digital twins that are city scale or digital twins of airports or other complex industrial enterprises. Would you like to talk a little bit about that? Because that might be an interesting topic for us to cover since you mentioned it.
Yeah, I think we are beating the horse to death. Just I don't give up on the B2C side. So first of all, clearly, industrial metaverse, it's I think in very short terms is more or less NVIDIA, who is very, very focused on that. You have now also Microsoft raising their hands, but you have the big guys, you have the Siemens, you have the BMW, you have really beautiful use cases.
And Microsoft closed their industrial metaverse team. They shut that down. They're pivoting to AI, which actually, candidly, most companies are pivoting to AI. Because we're seeing the take up, we're seeing the adoption there. There's hundreds of millions of people using AI, unlike the metaverse.
A couple of days they announced that they are very focused on the industrial metaverse. They haven't closed it down at all. Yeah, Microsoft. But put it aside, I think there are
HoloLens is still a big part of their.
Yeah. Let's put it aside and just say there is a huge traction on the industrial metaverse, as you say. There are tons of application. One I personally very, very much like is the twin of the Earth, which NVIDIA is working on for climate change, for simulations. And when you say virtual worlds, you use virtual worlds, you use digital twins, you use AI, you use what they call the omniverse, which is really, really beautiful. The other application where it's heavily used, and that's not only industrial, is in healthcare. So there are a lot of applications also where you use digital twin of human beings for virtual trainings for doctors, but also one where they have separated co-joint twins with expert from London doctors and expert from Brazil. So this is also one of the applications. Definition of the metaverse is vague and is big. So there are applications, but I don't deny that when you go to spatial, you feel lonely because if there is no event, what can you do there? Same for the others. So what is hindering the adoption? I think that is more the question, and you named it. We don't want to run around with this big headsets. We don't. So now Apple has made a big thing about spatial computing. It's basically augmenting everything, but you also have an immersive button. So this will change, even though you say it's heavy, it's big. Then you have Human. I don't know if you've seen that. The AI pin, beautiful, from one of the people who work basically at Apple, one of the big guys. He has founded this company, and you must look at this because there's a convergence of technology, which is quite different from when we had Second Life 10 years ago.
So this convergence of technologies is going to take a certain amount of time. I think a lot of people have been very enthusiastic about it, particularly people coming from crypto after 2017, where they felt like there was momentum. Of course, crypto goes in spikes. So of course, there's a period of momentum and then there's a reset. That seems to be the case, the pattern there. But the idea was that we were going to move into a decentralized web. An enormous amount of money was invested in that space, and a huge number of startups were created.
I want to take this in a slightly different direction, Robert. Again, as a futurist, I think it's just a timing issue, right?
Well, that's what I was about to say before you jumped in. But that's the point I'm making. It's going to take time to build this infrastructure. Decentralized web is a gigantic undertaking.
But there's, I think, you can argue about timing, but I don't think there's any scenario where we don't develop this capability, right? Because I don't know how you express the digital world and how you meld the digital and physical without these concepts, right? You'd have to basically say, listen, look, we can talk about Meta, but Apple has just entered into the spatial computing game. Yeah. And they're, again, blurring the lines of what the metaverse will be, because they are clearly working towards a view of digital immersion into the physical space.
Right? What's interesting about Apple's entry in the space is that they're not using the term metaverse. They're just getting rid of it. Probably from their perspective, it's radioactive.
They're using spatial computing, right? But right. If you're trying to argue what is the difference between spatial computing and metaverse, you're gonna run into very difficult definitions in terms of, you could say
no. That's not actually. There's nuance there that's worth unpacking, because one thing that Apple did not show is an immersive 3D world. Right? They didn't show that. What they're showing is augmented reality overlays, typically.
Right.
So they're saying we're going to bring 3D computing, or what they're calling spatial computing, into the workflow and into entertainment and into social space, but it's going to be an overlay on the real world. So that's one approach.
What we didn't see, but we know that they're working on it, right, is that we didn't see them with a real world version of their AR glasses where you could walk around on the street. You can't, Vision Pro, you can't do that with, right?
I think Apple has been doing an amazing job. They avoided AI, the hype word, and they avoided the metaverse. So to your point, they have done augmented reality. Spatial computing is part of this several layers of the metaverse, but they also have the magic button. So they have an immersive button where you can go into immersive worlds, but they know that the consumer is not ready for it. And they don't make it, when you see all the movie they have done, the video, they don't make it a one-man show. You sit on the sofa, you can still see the eyes, because the eyes for the interconnection are the most important. They have now also solved the haptic stuff, because haptic is also so important for your brain. So they have been so smart in how they bring this to the world.
I agree with you on that. I think it's going to be exciting to see what happens with Vision Pro. Martha, at this point, we like to get to know our guests better personally. And at this point, we're going to ask you a series of short questions before we take a break. Brett, why don't you go for it? Let's do the lightning round.
Okay, Dr. Martha. First of all, what was the first science fiction you remember being exposed to?
The early version of Star Trek, and I was probably 5, because my brother is 5 years older, and he loved everything around it. So we, the 2 younger sisters, were forced to watch it, and also we played it. So we played Barbie later, but we played first science fiction. So I was Captain Uhura, if you remember.
Yes, well, very good. What technology do you think has most changed humanity?
AI.
I think that will, for sure. Name a futurist or an entrepreneur that has influenced the way you think, and why?
Peter Diamandis.
The singularity guy. We're going to have him on the show in a few weeks, right, Robert?
Great.
No, maybe one other one which has impressed me over the last couple of months, Vishaan from Mind Valley. I'm now following him.
Yeah.
Cool. I think he is. He is. You should have him. He's now doing an AI course as well, which I'm joining, to become an AI evangelista. So it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing work.
What's the best prediction an entrepreneur, futurist, or sci-fi practitioner has ever made, do you think?
In terms of prediction, again, Peter Diamandis, he has this quote where he says, before it becomes a breakthrough, it's a crazy idea. And I think that holds true for any innovation we see.
Pretty much. Last one. This is a bit sci-fi, but what science fiction story is most representative of the future that you hope for? Are you going to say Ready Player One?
Dystopian future. I don't think
it doesn't have to be dystopian, but you think...
No, it doesn't have to be dystopian. I haven't seen, to be honest with you, and I love science fiction still. Anything which attracts me so much that I say I want to live in that future.
Okay, cool. Well, I mean, I'm a big fan of the Culture series from Ian Banks, and I don't mind the Blue Mars outcome for The Martians from Kim Stanley Robinson, who we're going to have on in September. So, but anyway, but let's have a quick break. You're listening to The Futurists. I'm your host, Brett King, with Rob Tercek, and we have Dr. Martha Boeckenfeld. We're going to be back right after this break to continue our conversation. Provoke Media is proud to sponsor, produce, and support the Futurist podcast. Provoke.fm is a global podcast network and content creation company with the world's leading fintech podcast and radio show, Breaking Banks. And of course, its spin-off podcasts, Breaking Banks Europe, Breaking Banks Asia Pacific, and the FinTech 5. But we also produce the official Finovate podcast, Tech on Reg, Emerge Everywhere, the podcast of the Financial Health Network, and Next Gen Banker. For information about all our podcasts, go to provoke.fm or check out Breaking Banks, the world's #1 fintech podcast and radio show. Welcome back to The Futurists. I'm your host, Brett King, with Rob Tercek joining me in the hosting chair today. We have we're into the Marthaverse, not the Metaverse, the Marthaverse. Dr. Martha is with us. Dr. Martha, you've got a bunch of quite impressive commercial credentials. You've spent time working at some very serious organizations. You still are. It's just been announced you're advising the G20 right now, which is all incredibly impressive. But when did you switch from being a digital evangelist to being a futurist within your career?
I would say that. Yeah, I switched quite early. I have been very fortunate. I've been always very, very much supported in what I'm doing. So even though I was a CEO of a bank, I had the liberty, or I wouldn't say even though, because I was a CEO of a bank, also I had the liberty to work with people who are into new technologies. And the more you get into it, so I worked with the digital lab from Deloitte, for example. If you go there and see, and that was like, I would say 6-7 years ago, and you see a 3D printer for food 10 years ago, and then you see 3D and everything, you become like, wow, this is already here. The future is now. It's not something which we have to think about in the future. And then you start thinking, okay, if the future is now, what does it mean? So you feel around also in your management team, maybe people are not yet there. How do you get those people on board? How do you bring them into the next level? And what I realized very early on is it's experiencing. So everything you experience becomes real. And that's why I'm also so excited about virtual worlds. So even though I go in there with a desktop, as we discussed before with Web 2, I sort of experience it in a different way. So everyone who has created an avatar immediately thinks, okay, I want the avatar to be X, Y, that, or when we have now Apple, I want my digital twin to be X, Y, that, because you feel it's your self-extension. But then you also think about, okay, that's now. So if that is already the future, which is now, what's next? What's the next big thing, as Steve Jobs would say? What can we do with it? Because it's not like, okay, fine, I can go in virtual worlds, but what does it mean for us? What does it mean for society? And that's when I started also to think about, okay, how can we change? How can I make a contribution and add value to this change?
What is the next big thing?
The next big thing for me is really, it depends also on the timeline you are looking for, with all the hurdles we have.
Well, give us 2020s, 2030s, 2040s.
Yeah, exactly. Go further out. Yeah, sure.
Exactly. So let's say 2030, 2040. How can we, to speak also a little bit with the words which Peter is using, Diamandis, and also Vishan, is how can we create the world of abundance for every one of us? How do we get there? So how do we create a world where we have this richness, not in terms of, yeah, I'm rich, I have money and so on, but with all the resources we have, we can all live a happy life. And how does it look like? So from my point of view, we should be able in 2040, even though we have lots of hurdles and it might sound idealistic, that climate change is no problem. Yeah. So I just draw this picture because, as you know,
eventually it's not a problem. But in the meantime, I guess the question is how many people have to die before we really.
Absolutely. But we see now with the heat wave, everyone is suffering. As soon as people suffering,
climate change is here, right? People are dying from climate change right now.
Exactly.
Show me one government that's doing anything about it. The heat waves here, but the government's are non-responsive.
The UK just said we're going to max out on oil and gas. I mean, it's crazy.
They're going the other way.
But that's why I say experiences, positive and negative. And when you feel it, you burn yourself, then you need to do something.
It is a burden, isn't it, Martha? Because that's the one thing when you are a futurist, when you're always extrapolating and forecasting and thinking of the future, like that example I just gave about the UK, it's like, how can we be so stupid, like that we're doing this? I just watched Oppenheimer. I don't know if you guys have seen it yet.
I saw last night, yeah.
Yeah, an epic movie. But what worries me about that is this is our modus operandi as humans. We just go out and do this stuff because we can, and we'll worry about it later, and here we have, atomic bombs around the world, enough to destroy the world many times over. And we kept burning fossil fuels because we're making a ton of money.
We also, fortunately, we have seen humanity is, in a sense, destroying themselves. So now the big question is, will AI decide for us? Because we are basically incapable of creating this world, which I was just describing. So will AI be the better humans? So all of these kind of questions have to be solved. My view is not. So my view is still there's a big part playing for humanity. And if we do it right, if we use AI correctly, if we use the ethical principles and everything, we will come to a world where everyone has access, everyone has a possibility, less people die, you, for whatever it's worth, live longer. But in a way, and that's the beauty, but that's also the challenge. How do we get that people still have this feeling of nature and still have this feeling of roots around them, that they know where they come from, that they know, like the old Greeks were saying, cogito ergo sum, so that I know where I belong to. I think also AI thinks, question mark. So all these questions we have to solve. So it will not be as straightforward as we might believe. But I do believe in 2040, 2050, we have a completely different setup, and we should get enough people to get there. If you look at the world leaders, with some questions around those who monopolize, like what scares me is people like Sam Altman with WorldCoin, or Elon Musk with the satellites. I mean, apart from the fact that he has killed the bird now, but is there a war? Okay, I changed my satellites and you get the internet over Ukraine. It sounds beautiful first, but the power those single people have in history,
I mean,
it's not always good.
No, I really want to get Ian Bremmer on, Robert, because he's got a really, with his G0 take. I don't know, if you're a fan of Ian. I'm a tremendous fan.
I'm interested. I think he's a provocative thinker. I want to return to something.
The whole technocracy issue that he raises, the fact that there are technology individuals.
It's a point Martha just made, which is that it seems like power is being concentrated in the hands of very few, very, very powerful and rich people, and yet, Martha, you're optimistic about this scenario, this Peter Diamandis scenario of abundance. Now, I've been hearing about abundance from him for many years, more than 10 years. He's been talking about it. And from everything I can see, we're not moving towards that. Everything I see is that for most people, they're living with less, they're having less money, they're having less opportunity, and now they're very fearful because it looks like AI might displace some or many of them. I don't know if I buy that whole scenario, but I'm trying to find out what gives you hope. Where do you find inspiration or hope that we're going to be on the path of abundance? Because I really am curious to understand that.
I think it's a bit of a mixture of new technology, but also connecting, and that's what I'm trying to explain, or trying to also myself do, to connecting to your soul. Yeah. So how do you do this stretch of both? And my network consists of people who come from very old traditions. So let's say they have huge shaman education. They might themselves come from this kind of origin where they draw on nature, and they have also this confidence of, yes, the world will be changing, but we are humans, and even we have all the fear. We always have fear. We always have fear about AI, about something artificial and stuff like that. But the confidence comes only from within. And you are exactly right. You have big power players. But when you see also the other people like Peter Diamandis, they're still there, vision, they're still there. And what is exciting, and the shamans also there are, if you see the traction, and Peter, when you have him on the show, by the way, use statistics. he will show you from his statistic how the world became more abundant already now. Despite
I agree with that, but we've also got the worst. Like Thomas Piketty says that the United States has the worst inequality of any modern nation at any time in history. Right? You'd have to go back to the Middle Ages to find worse inequality. Now there are other countries on the Gini coefficient that have higher Gini coefficient, but this is the most powerful economy in the world, and you have more people living in poverty in the United States than in Mexico. Right. So you have 30 million Americans at any point could be evicted because they may not be able to afford their next rent check. This is
an entrenched political class that continues to pass legislation that favors rich people. So
who leads this? Who leads this change to abundance? It's not going to be the billionaires. It's not going to be.
No, it's not going. But don't forget the. I would say, in a positive sense, also the power of the people and the power of certain people. So if you can take not only as many people, but people who are maybe not the Microsoft, the Zuckerberg, the Steve Jobs, and those people, but you can take a lot of other people with you. This has huge power. And we have seen that also in history. And what we also have seen in history, as you correctly mentioned, there was always, before something got better, it got worse. In history, that was always the case. Unfortunately, I think also we have to live with the fact that some of the things will, in one way or the other, it doesn't mean atomic bomb. It might be something different we haven't foreseen yet, as we have seen with COVID. Something will explode. But even COVID had some, I would say, positive connotation in the sense that we changed behavior. We change behavior. We are more conscious of the fact when we connect with people, we are more conscious of the fact that we are a person, that we have humanity. And we are more conscious of the fact that we are global, but we are not global. It's rubbish, the globalization, because data is not global. So a lot of the things, I hate COVID, and I'm not, who can be not hating COVID, but a lot of the things are kind of eye-opener. And that eye-opening, which I have seen before, and all the actions also from G20, financial inclusion, through because of COVID, is not meaningless. It goes in the right direction. So that's why I'm so confident.
Now, a lot of the technologies that you were talking about in the first half, things like decentralized web, Web3, cryptocurrency, NFTs, the notion of a metaverse or some sort of immersive world, these concepts all depend on network technology. They all ride on the network. And one thing we've noticed about network technology is that it tends to have increasing returns to market leaders. In other words, the first company in the space or the dominant company tends to crowd out the others and take the lion's share of the value. We've seen that happen in a number of different fields. Social networking is certainly a good example of that. So it would seem to me then that one of the things we need to be concerned about if we want to move to a future of abundance is our reliance, our dependence on network technologies. And we have to be very conscious of the fact that they tend to create market leaders that are so big, they become planetary scale companies. In other words, that leads to, these dominant figures we were talking about a moment ago, the titans of technology.
This is in techno-socialism. This is why I predicted that Elon Musk is going to be the first trillionaire, because I think Starlink is going to put it over the top. But, in 10 years' time, if you
he's going to pay for the Mars mission with Starlink, which super brilliant idea.
It's not only, it's the whole ecosystem he created, because if you look at it, I think without doubt, he's the most powerful and most dangerous man in the world right now. Yeah, because he is exactly what you said. Everything is towards him. So the other person just developing himself is Sam Altman, even though he talks the right talk, but also with WorldCoin. WorldCoin created a big controversy. I love the idea of identity, which you can take no matter where you go. Mm-hmm. But do I want to put it into one company? Obviously, they deny.
Like if it was a collection of world governments, right? If it was the G20 that said, let's do this identity system, and the passport authorities of those governments got behind it, I'd have no problem. right?
Yeah,
The big
exactly.
issue with both ideas, whether it's a private company or a government, is that that's centralization. And I think the digital identity people are leaning towards
But
decentralized
the
identity.
self-sovereign identity thing,
Decentralization is blockchain. Sorry, excuse me. The blockchain and what it connects. I mean, the idea of the whole Web3. People saying Web2 is already the idea. Social capitalism and everything is gone. So why you believe in Web3? But we always get second chances. So not only second lives. From that point of view, I'm still convinced that if we get enough leaders who might not be the trillionaires of this world up for like the futurists like you are and I am and others are, if we get them all up and getting the people with them, we have a very, very good chance of success. And we also, as you said at the beginning, G20, we have this technology. So WorldCoin is doing it. Maybe G20 is not the right one. Who's the right one? The person themselves are the right one. If you can take responsibility for your own identity without losing your key for it, which everyone will do anyway. But there will be other ways because we are now thinking in keys. We are now thinking we think very linear, but we have to think wider. Technology, always there were people who develop technology. Like now WorldCoin has developed something everyone thought not possible. Now they develop it. And how they develop it, yeah, they do it. Yeah. So that gives me confidence in one sense. If they can do it, everyone else can do it.
Very cool.
All right. So let's delve a little bit more into the world of 2050. I know we've only got 5 minutes left, but describe for me the interactions digitally in the world of 2050 for an average person.
Money is gone as we know it. There is no money. Every one of us will have, like a little bit like we had in old days, will contribute to and create to something where their skills are, but will also be rewarded for it. So if you remember the very old days where you were living in your little town, this is just in a different way, in a digital way, because you now can subscribe to digital values and we cannot even imagine. You can subscribe something, creators, everyone can create, everyone can participate. And hopefully we also have less problems with health. I mean, I think health is one of the biggest factors. And in quotes, in very layman terms, we are happy with ourselves.
On our way to long-term longevity and curing all of the diseases, right?
Yes, that's
a problem for AI, essentially.
Why is this a problem for AI?
No, it's not a problem for AI. It's the problem that AI solves. Right?
That's problem. Yeah. If you think again, I mean, science fiction tells us with Johnny Depp transcendence, where his brain was separated and lived longer than he lived. That's obviously something, going towards singularity, which I would hope would not happen, that someone again dominates. When you say hope, it doesn't know, we don't know, but we have to have this very clear picture in our mind, imagine what is not imaginable right now and say, this is what we want. We want everyone healthy. We want a good life for everyone. Everyone is contributing to this in one way or the other, because everyone has a super, super great skill set. And how can we nurture and how can we make benefit of this value creation of every person?
So it's sounds a lot more cooperative. But in the most recent global event that we had with COVID, we had very detailed plans for cooperation, and they sort of broke apart. But we have had instances of global cooperation, in the past. The Human Genome Project, is one example. But what's going to get us to work together? Do you think it's AI and climate change that matures humanity to be more of a unit as a species?
I think one, unfortunately, is always a crisis, like you mentioned before, COVID, climate change, burning. And then what we as human beings have realized over hundreds and thousands of years, we can live without food, we can live without water, but we cannot live without community. So the community aspect will come much, much more out. And you see that, I think millions of people, also you mentioned the US, have suffer from mental depression. Yeah, guess why? It's not only because they don't have enough money, but it's the whole society. So this is what needs to be changed, and it can be changed.
So you're talking about this is the argument I'm going to make with Peter actually when he comes on the show. Is I don't think you can have a post-scarcity abundance world with capitalism. So what's going to be the end of capitalism? I mean, I just had a conversation with my good friend, Jeff Bai tonight. We're sitting over dinner at Coffee Club here in Bangkok, and we were chatting about this. And I was just saying to him, I was talking about this stuff, and he's like, I don't see it. I don't see capitalism coming to an end, not for hundreds of years.
It's hardwired into society and culture.
But that's what has to happen.
Remember also the next generation. What are their values? What are they trying
generational shift.
I
do firmly believe
there's merit to that. There's merit to that, and you'll know that's palpable, right? So you have a much greater commitment to climate consciousness in people who are under 30. It's their world, right?
All the Roblox and everything is built on collaboration. It's built on I create a game, but I don't create it for me. It's built on collaboration. So the younger generation, name it, Alpha, Gen Z, whatever, they know how to collaborate. We just forgot how to do it.
My youngest kids, they definitely fit into that. They don't see color, they don't see race, and they don't see nationality. They just got friends all around the world that they're digitally connected to. I think that's going to really frame their future view of the world.
The future is that the baby boomers have to die off and make space for Gen Z to take over and replace our values with theirs.
But that's what happens, right? That's life, Hopefully the longevity treatments won't kick in before the baby boomers are gone.
So all the people who don't know how to collaborate and create good communities.
Well, I mean, in techno-socialism, I said that we've got to change from competing against other humans to competing for humanity. That's the big shift that climate and AI has to produce.
For 50 years, we've been brainwashed into believing that the market is the solution to everything.
Garbage,
and the market isn't the solution
to
everything.
It hasn't solved climate change.
Yeah, the market's very effective for allocation of certain resources, and it works really well. But that doesn't mean it works for everything, and it's a subset of society. It's not the macro set of society.
I even think that
society has other tools at its disposal. Yeah. Hopefully, other generations will realize that and proceed from that perspective. Martha, do you have any long-term vision you want to share with us? Something like, give us something 50 years out. What will happen to Europe? What's the future in Europe in 50 years?
Is the UK back in?
Not Europe.
Oh, you think it's going to break apart, the EU?
No, it doesn't have to do with break apart. I think there's a global force for good and for bad. So there will be a global battle. As we know, US, China are already battling like hell. US is far behind what tech is in China, good or bad. So how will this be solved?
Really?
But I don't think that Europe will survive.
We're about to start another episode here.
No. Well, just look at the Shanghai announcement I sent you about blockchain earlier. But
I'm such a skeptic.
And I
know, you even sided with Greg Mitbo on my Facebook page about this. Come on, dude. Come on.
Americans have themselves worked up into a frenzy about China. Look, China's going to take care of China. They have the hands full.
Anyway.
You bet. They're already taking care of Europe big time. So
Martha,
they are heavily investing. So
we have ran out of time. It's been a very dynamic conversation. Can I ask you, how do people follow your musings? I know you have a big presence on social. So how do people follow what you're talking about and thinking about?
The best way to follow me is on LinkedIn. I'm also a faculty member of the Fast Future Fundamentals, where we teach future trends. And that is another way of being part of a community which really looks forward in all aspects. So EFI is there, some people might know, for the future of money. There are people for health, for everything. But if you want to know more, what I believe is the future and what you can do now, how to learn, it's LinkedIn.
Great. Martha, it's been a pleasure having you on The Futurists this week. Thank you very much for joining us. And Brett, great to reconnect with you. We keep missing each other in our travels. I'm so thrilled to see you again. I want to give a big shout out to the folks at Provoke Media, particularly Kevin Hirschhorn, who is our producer and engineer, and Elizabeth Severance, our producer, and the rest of the crew at Provoke. They're the people that keep us going every week. Thank you all for your help. And thanks to our listeners. Your support makes such a big difference to us. I keep hearing back from people who like the show, who like these conversations. They're interested in the conversations we're bringing and the experts that we're interviewing. We want to hear more from you. So connect with us on social media. We're very, very happy to get that kind of feedback from our audience. And if you like the show, do us one favor, tell a friend, help them find the show. There's a hell of a lot of podcasts out there, but it turns out this one is really gaining traction. So we're thrilled about that. And thank you all for listening. We will see you next week. We will see you
in the future.
Well, that's it for the Futurists this week. If you like the show, we sure hope you did. Please subscribe and share it with the people in your community. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star review. That really helps other people find the show. And you can ping us anytime on Instagram and Twitter at Futurist Podcast for the folks that you'd like to see on the show or the questions that you'd like us to ask. Thanks for joining. And as always, we'll see you in the future.